So, a funny thing happened on my way to making this video. Well, maybe it isn't so much funny. It definitely wasn't haha funny, and it definitely wasn't all that strange because it happens all the time. Let's start over again. So, a frustrating thing happened to me on the way to making this video. Resistance happened. It's something we all face. Sometimes it might be writer's block. Sometimes it might be the dreaded empty page or the blank canvas. For some people, it might be stage fright. For others, it might be the sore muscles from that first exercise experience leading us to stay on the comfy couch. Maybe it's the weed bed out where the flower bed should be. Or what happens a lot for me, it's that overflowing inbox, that overwhelming list of things that we know we really need to do and even what we want to do, but we just can't. We run into some sort of a wall. Steven Pressfield, in his book, The War of Art, writes about this. Resistance cannot be seen, touched, heard, or smelled, but it can be felt. We experience it as an energy field, radiating from a work in potential. It's a repelling force. It's negative. Its aim is to shove us away, distract us, and prevent us from doing our work. This resistance is frustrating for many of us because we start off with a great idea, something that we want to do, but we just can't get going with it. Everyone faces it. Steven Pressfield writes as a successful best-selling author, and he faces resistance all the time. The problem is that we have an attitude toward resistance where we see it as a sign of weakness. I shouldn't have this, so I'm just going to try harder and try harder. And just like trying to get through a brick wall, when you try harder, you end up being more bruised. The other thing that happens with resistance that's common, at least in my life, is that it becomes a source of shame. It is another signal from the universe that I am a failure in another thing that I want to do in my life. But what if we rethink our attitude toward resistance? What if we turn it around, rather than see it as a sign of weakness or shame, to see it as a gift? Steven Pressfield, a little later in his book, The War of Art, points us in this direction. Like a magnetized needle floating on the surface of oil, resistance will unfailingly point to true north, meaning that calling or action it most wants to stop us from doing. We can use this. We can use it as a compass. We can navigate by resistance, letting it guide us to that calling or action that we must follow before all others. Rule of thumb: the more important a call or action is to our soul's evolution, the more resistance we will feel toward pursuing it. I'm learning that once I get past the initial frustration, I find a strange sort of encouragement. It becomes a signal that I am on the verge of something, that we are facing a threshold that's important for us to walk through. Yes, when we get on the other side, we will become different people, but isn't that the idea? That we need to be people who are growing into more and more who we are meant to be. And then once we begin to see this resistance as a signal, as a sign that we're going in a good direction, then resistance is a fuel. It becomes energy. We use it all around us. I have lights shining on me, powered by alternating current. How do we develop strong muscles? We do resistance training. We find weights or bands or things to push up against. And as we push up against that resistance, then our muscles with time become stronger and more developed. When we see resistance as fuel, we find that our inertia is overcome. We find that a new movement is happening. So how do we actually use this resistance? I'm coming to think about it more in terms of 3 P's: presence, practice, and passion. Presence, I think, is the foundation, and I'm going to be talking a lot about presence because everything comes back to presence. It's the foundation for this fully dimensional life. Presence is found as we find ways to connect with not only the presence that's all around us in the universe, but also being present in our moment, in this very moment. So we need to find ways daily to connect with this presence. First is to connect with our body, to be embodied. I've been doing this through trying to get an exercise program set up, whether it's running or using weights. But an easy way for me to do that is by practicing Tai Chi. Some people might use yoga, but the key is to become embodied in each moment, to acknowledge we have a wonderful body, and to be alive is to nurture this body. Another way that we need to connect with presence is by connecting with our heads. I use journaling, or Julia Cameron's method of writing morning pages. It's a way to take the ideas and the words which are just kind of swirling around in our heads and not really having any form, and giving them form. Even if they're just squiggles on the paper, and when we're done writing them, and not even we can read them. But it's the process of connecting with those words, connecting with those ideas, even if we don't know exactly what they mean. But it's about being present. And then the other way that we need to be connected to presence is through our hearts. And this is where the spirituality can help us in doing that. I practice centering prayer, which is a way of daily contemplating the presence of the beloved. Some people might use quiet time. Some people might use daily devotions. Any kind of prayer, any kind of way of connecting and sorting through and centering on where our hearts are both present and not present. Because that's also part of our present reality, is where we're lost. And we need to see that. We need to feel that. We need to know that. So we have presence. Now we have practice. And this is where Stephen Pressfield talks about turning pro. Mark Forster, who is a time management guru, talks about a principle of little and often, where if we have something we're working on, we don't have to get it all done all at once, but we do need to keep working on it, to keep moving it forward. And sometimes this little and often work is like moving a stone here or there, or at least putting a couple words on the blank page so it's no longer blank, or pouring out a rough draft that we know we're going to cut most of it out, but it's getting into the flow. It's putting something into practice. The writer of the letter of the Hebrews says some of these same things in Hebrews 12, the first couple verses. So then let's also run the race that is laid out in front of us. Since we have such a great cloud of witnesses surrounding us, let's throw off any extra baggage, get rid of the sin that trips us up, and fix our eyes on Jesus, faith's pioneer and perfecter. He endured the cross, ignoring the shame, for the sake of the joy that was laid out in front of him, and sat down at the right side of God's throne. He's talking here with the image of the marathon, not the sprint, but a race which is long distance. And remember, any race is just run one step at a time. Moving forward with what we are doing is what will help us. Finally, we come to passion. The writer of Hebrews kind of touches on this at the last part of the passage I read. Jesus, for the sake of the joy set before him, endured. And that's what we need to connect with. I had a wonderful idea and even a sense, an experience of passion as I first came up with this idea of the video series. I have a passion for preaching. I have a passion for walking with someone as a spiritual director and exploring with them the wonders of the Holy Spirit. But sometimes that passion gets lost in the minutia of the moving a rock here and rock there. And what keeps us coming back to the practice, what keeps us coming back to the presence, is to keep staying connected to the passion. And passion is important because passion and love will keep us not only going forward, but passion and love will keep coming back to us with grace, with self-forgiveness. One of the most important things I've learned in facing my own resistance and my own procrastination is to practice radical grace with myself. Resistance is tricky, but the presence which creates us, the presence which inspires us, the presence which is a gift to us, can never be completely overcome by whatever resistance we may face. Be present and be fully alive. See you next time.